Oh, back again. Right, I'm going to start this all again. Right. So we move forward into the facts, not the stories, not the papers, but we can be shown the Thames torso murders were recorded between 1870s and late 1880s. So I was telling you about Dr. Cream going to prison for 10 years in 1881. So, and in 1881, Conan Doyle's father went into one of the houses. The chat box told us two different stories, so I'm not sure what's right and wrong on that, but this is the chat box giving me this as well. So I'm going to move on from that 1881. Also, in 1878, Cream, Conan Doyle and Joseph Bell were in Edinburgh at the same time. Now, it's and for some reason the chat box knows they never met. Well, it's fine. They were all in the same sort of thing anyhow. But Dr. Cream was on a course because he'd failed the course in London, so he went to Edinburgh to pass it. And he passed it. Looking like he passed it straight away, to be honest with you, but that's another one of my theories. Was he bribing someone? I don't know. But in 1879 there was a paper come out on Gelsemium, written by Conan Doyle. And that for me was quite interesting because in 1881 his dad went into the into this. He either went for respite or he went to the asylum. Now, it would fit if he went for the into the asylum for me, but I'm not making things fit. I'm just telling it as I get it. So yeah, I'm going to leave that because I've already gone through the Gelsemium and the way it mimics alcoholism. If you ever wanted to watch the film on it, or the Conan Doyle, because he wrote a book about it, as you do. It's called The Devil Root Foot. Might be interesting. Okay. Right. There was multiple cases, dismembered remains. This is dismembered remains found in the Thames and around London. Right. Okay. So you had that wasn't hidden. Now, it stated before it was hidden, so it's already contradicted itself, the chat box. Yeah, dismembered remains found in the Thames and around London. That's not hidden, just the one hidden in the Scotland Yard building. No single killer identified. The cuts in some cases suggested knowledge of anatomy. This was noted at the time by a medical men. Right, so no single killer ever identified, same as Jack the Ripper. The cuts in some cases suggested knowledge of anatomy. That's the same as Jack the Ripper. This was noted at the time by medical men. Okay, same as Jack the Ripper. Then the Whitechapel murders, the Canonical Five, a term created later, not at the time. Well, for me, I think it was the report. That's what it come under, and it was only released after 100 years because it's very convenient, the name. And 100 years after that would have been 1988. Now, I think it was used in 1970, maybe a bit earlier. So the Canonical Five for me was just possibly a secret at the time. Made the secret files. Yeah, Canonical Five, a term created later, not at the time. that we know of. I put that bit that we know of. So I believe it was something that was there, right, in my theory. So the victims: Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, now Luce Stride, the only one found outside, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Kelly. And Mary Kelly was inside. So it says these were found outside. Now I don't believe. I think the only one we know, Mary Jane Kelly, was supposed to have been found out inside. But for me, Mary Jane Kelly was the one that got away. So they had to use a different body for her and say it was her, because I think it was actually. I think Catherine Eddowes, the chat box said people couldn't be kept that long. Well, yeah. They brought Nelson's body back in a vat of wine, and things had moved on from then. So, right. The difference, right? The injuries focused on the throat and the abdominal mutilation. Sorry, you've got mutilation there. The torso murders were mutilated. They were vile. They were chopped up. In some cases, organs removed. Right. Well, we know that there was organs removed in the Pinchin Street murders and the Torso murders, because they didn't find all of them. Again, medical opinions at the time were divided. Some said skill and others said basic knowledge. So basic knowledge could give you student again. That's another time they've said basic knowledge. So 2 occasions were they used to train some young person with no knowledge of the crime, gets to practice on a body. Well, they're already dead, but gets to do anatomy training. Right, the police, the Metropolitan Police and the City of London Police, right, now they worked separately. This caused confusion and communications issues. This is where they hid it in chaos, and they're still doing it to this day, as far as I'm concerned, in my theory. The graffito, put it up here because I'm not looking. The graffito, the Goulston Street graffiti was found near a piece of an apron linked to Catherine Eddowes. Okay, so they ripped that off the wall, right, and it was about men, the men who will be blamed for nothing. Then we have the apron, Catherine Eddowes' apron. I feel that she was working at the time when she was murdered, so she was murdered during the day, not in the morning, because he just ripped her apron. Now that sounds like a violent attack, and they maybe caught her by her apron trying to get away, and it ripped, and that's what they used to corroborate the graffiti. Now, if you were going to rub something off, you wouldn't want it corroborated by anything, the apron here. So for me, that was staged, clear. Was Catherine working at the time of her murder? Now that was what I've put on the end of it. So because I've got my loud script and a few bits of words I've put in myself. Right, so back to the chat box. The writing was removed on the orders of Charles Warren. Now, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but we might have to. The reason, right, back to the chat box. The reason, fear of public disorder and anti-Jewish riots. it's like they were goading the Jewish community at the time. The Masonic spelling of Jews, or the word men, plural, I think that's probably why they subdued it. And the reason why the stage crimes, they had to stage crimes, was because there was too many people. The Pinchin Street murders, they could get away with it for a while, but now it was getting a bit like they could get caught. So it'd be better to stage the murders and not have the bodies at scene. But we need to do it forensically. We have to look at the situation, and this is why I go back to this Joseph Bell, and he was the physician of the Queen at the time, and you've got Prince Albert Victor being blamed, but I think the cover-up was based on Cleveland Street information, which you can get on Wikipedia. Now, the next year, 1889, the Cleveland Street scandal discovered through telegraph boys a male brothel in London. Clients linked to high society, one name rumoured but never proven, Prince Albert Victor. So he never got proved because it wasn't him, as far as I'm concerned, wasn't him. So you can't prove somebody's guilty if they're not. But they had Lord Somerset, who was a high-ranking Mason at the time. So, yeah, and he was a personal friend of the Prince of Wales. So that's where I'm getting that part of my theory from. So no charges against high-ranking figures. Well, that's what the chat box says. Well, that's a problem because there was Lord Somerset for the start off, and a few others. Some involved left the country. The case was not fully pursued. Okay, the police never pursued it, or they were warned off. Now we could warn them off. At that time, we had respect for people, but maybe they didn't deserve the respect they got. The press reported carefully legal risks and social pressure. This limited what could be printed. So it was basically propaganda. If you can't, there was no freedom to the press, obviously, if the legal risks. Now, that shows a level of them hiding something. Now that's the chat box, and they haven't put anything to that because that fits into my theory quite well. The press reported carefully for legal risks and social pressure. Now, who would have got the pressure at that time on the Cleveland Street if it was a high-ranking person? So they give them somebody high, but they didn't go any further. There's just that one that was really intense. And the funny thing is, if you read the Wikipedia on it, his friend, the Prince of Wales, tries to get him back to Britain, but the police weren't having it. So maybe there was a few good ones in there. Not them all, in my opinion and my theory. So we are left with this unsolved murder, unidentified killer, or killers. I'll put that bit, or killers. A separate scandal of bribery, right? Now I put of bribery because when I was, before they stopped talking to me on the Ripper site, I had a conversation with somebody who had a go at me spelling because I'm not the best. I'm bothered. And he said he was a 33 degree. Well, I didn't know what one of them was. Now, I found out later that was somebody in a high-ranking Mason. And he says, well, everybody knows it's about bribery. Well, I was talking about the Jack the Ripper case. Oh, so I just put on, wow. I didn't know that. Never spoke to us again. So, and that was on a Ripper site, on YouTube. So, oh no, it wasn't on YouTube. That was actually on the Ripper site. Aye, sorry. Involving right, a separate scandal involving powerful men. Okay. Money talks, people walk. Partially suppressed. I think they tried their hardest to suppress it. I think if I present my theory, because everybody else has done theirs, and if you think this could bring down a government and the royal family, what limits would they go to suppress it? So, because I think Lord Salisbury was something to do with the stables at the palace or something like that. So it would bring the royal family into the problem. They partially suppressed the timeline. The timeline remains close, but no direct evidence links these events together. Well, it wouldn't be if they suppressed the evidence, would they? So they suppressed what they could, but you've got bribery and you've got cream. So that's a connection for a start off. There was also a doctor, I think it was Dr. Broadbent, that was the Prince of Wales. Now, I wouldn't know that name. I got it off the chat box again. Whether it still exists on the chat box, it could be out else. Was basically he was being bribed. Now, he was a physician to the Prince of Wales at the time. So there's another connection to the bribery and at the time, if you've read the Wikipedia, I think there was a lot of letters going at the end and upsetting the royal family. Now, I can't say if Cream sent them a letter or not, but this Broadbent, or whatever they call him, Broadband or something, Broadbent, rose up in the ranks and he was getting bribed according to the chat box. Now, so was Lord Somerset, which was higher ranking than this. He was made a physician later on, I believe. So he was going up and Somerset was going down. He couldn't save Somerset, but he saved this one. And it makes you wonder why he could save one but not the other. Yeah, I've got my opinions on Broadbent and what he done. He probably saved somebody's respectability, let's say. So this was involving powerful men, partially suppressed. Well, it was suppressed. It was never supposed to get out the Cleveland Street. It was never supposed to get out, and basically they had to do it because it was getting near. It was bubbling over, let's say, and they had to give it enough time for the Jack the Ripper case to settle down. Because, as far as I'm concerned, Cream, if he was bribing one of the coroners from the Ripper case, and he was bribing W.H. Smith's, that was the paper sensationalised. That's how that's how we carried all over the world and became the greatest story ever, unsolved crime. And the bribery. Now, I'm going to give you another programme to watch, and it's the scandal in Bohemia. Now, if you transfer the men to women and the women to men, on some cases, you've got a woman dressed up as a man in a man's called Irene Adler, which is Eagle, which is in the Ripper case, a man called Eagle. Yeah, and I think that's a similar storyline, and they swapped the roles, gender roles, because it was legal at the time to have a boyfriend if you were a bloke and you had a boyfriend. And, anyhow, you could go to prison for 2 years, as some people found out. Oscar Wilde. So yeah, as far as the chat box saying no direct evidence links these events together. Well, I think it's not that hard to see it in my theory. So we'll go to the last bit. So we move forward again to a name, a Dr. Cream. Thomas Neil Cream, known as Dr. Cream, born in Scotland, but he immigrated to Canada and that's where he got his medical information. It's missed all that out. I had that the other day. Trained in medicine in Canada, then London, and then Edinburgh, and later practice in America. Now, he was doing abortions and stuff like that. I'm not sure he ever poisoned anybody. What I think was, my theory was his motive was to bribe people, and maybe somebody had passed away because he'd done a procedure on a woman which was wrong, and they passed away, and he was the patsy, and the patsy was poison. So when he comes back later on to England, London, and starts bribing people, the best thing they could ever do was he's got 10 years for poison. Let's just say it's the Lambeth poisoning. And nobody will go into the bribery side of things and look for who he's bribing. Although it was out there, but not in your face. So he was probably unexpected, and then when Crippen come back, they just totally wiped him out. So them two hung. But before he hung, he said he was Jack. Dr. Cream said he knew. Well, they said he supposedly said, because there was no recording at the time, which there wouldn't be if the information was suppressed. And then in 1881, when he was arrested, he had a doppelganger. And now I believe the doppelganger was Tom Letty, and he worked with Dr. Crippen. And Dr. Crippen gave him to Cream the information, because they were all American based. That's the American connection, you see. So they managed to get Cream out the way early on, but they didn't know who the doppelganger was. Well, that was mentioned in his court case, apparently. So he went away for 10 years. Tom Letty had to do a run-up because I think he was getting set up as the patsy for the Ripper murders. They had to find another one. And Crippen, they've got photographs of Tom Letty, and I've had them on the internet, on the chat box. And yet, they have a drawn picture. Now, the drawn picture is the double of Dr. Crippen. So that's where I got Crippen from. And that's all America for me. That's the American side coming over to try and make money, bribing people, selling information. It's a bit like espionage, really. Yeah. Right. He was convicted of murder, but not in London first, but in the United States for poisoning, and sent to prison and released before his full term. Now it's saying here under suspicious circumstances. His family paid for him because he got an inheritance, and it sounded like they were quite well off anyhow. So why he needed to bribe people, I don't know. He returns to London in 1889 after the Ripper murders. His method, right? Now, it's got it here. Not the knife, but poison. Strychnine. Victims, mainly women, connected to prostitution. He also wrote letters, now, and accused others, but it doesn't say of what. I mean, it has to be something serious to be able to accuse somebody high-ranking and demand money. Blackmail, arrested, 1892, tried, found guilty, hanged at Newgate Prison, November 1892. Story that stays on the gallows, he said, "I'm Jack." Well, it could have been, or even, because it wasn't recorded at the time, "I know Jack." You know what I mean? But no official record confirms this. The executioner, James Billington, did not record it. Well, we can't be sure if it was suppressed. It's just it admits that it was suppressed evidence. So, what did they suppress? In official notes, the words appear later in reports, not at the time. So we're left with a doctor, a killer, a man who used poison. Now, we only know he used poison in America, or did he? Did they use the poison to arrest him on both occasions? You don't know. But that would mean that he was arrested on orders from somebody high up for a crime he didn't commit, which is poison. Because I don't think an abortion would have been enough, and that sounds really callous, but I know what I mean. They were different times, and doctors were not put on a pedestal, and well, possibly classed as elite at the time. So you would do a cover-up for something like that, but they needed him in prison. So I'm not sure if he was a poisoner or just into poison. And he was in Edinburgh in 1878, and Conan wrote the paper in 1879. But in 1878 he got his certificate and disappeared to America, or wherever he went. He didn't go back to London, I don't think, because it's never told us that. So, poison, not the knife. In London, after the Ripper, no proven link to the Whitechapel murders. Well, that's the chat box telling me there's no proven link. Yet, if he did bribe one of the coroners, that's a link. And the link for that would be, we'll go back to when he said that it wasn't recorded, and the suppression of evidence. So, yes, there's no proof, but you've got the coroner at the Ripper case on the chat box, and the information I got said he was one of the ones he was bribing. So that's a link to the Ripper cases. What information did he have on the coroner? And did the coroner work at the Whitechapel? At the Whitechapel mortuary? Because if he did, that's where I think Catherine Eddowes actually, in my theory, was murdered. And there was no way, because there was, after the fact again, a report by a police officer that probably disappeared while I'm talking about it, that there was an altercation. I'm sure it was the Whitechapel mortuary, but they just changed it to the main street where they were supposedly arrested her, but she never got out the mortuary, in my mind, and that's where her apron was ripped and used to corroborate the crime scene. Now, they found all that later on, not in Mitre Square, further away. So, yeah. So I'll end it there. So it's been split twice. If you can look yourselves, and if you get the chance of watching The Scandal in Bohemia, and you see it, a fella, if you on Wikipedia, the man called Vec, dressed as a priest. Sherlock Holmes dresses a priest. In the club, the gentleman's club, you've got a woman dressed as a man, and that's Irene Adler. Adler in German is Eagle. Eagle was in the Jack the Ripper case, but he was blamed for nothing. Yep, that was the writing on the wall after Liz Stride died, but she died after. In my theory, she died after Catherine Eddowes. So Catherine Eddowes was the third victim, not the fourth, and that was in the Whitechapel. And that's only my theory. And yeah, you can look that up. And if you can watch them programs, you might be able to link them or see a link in the murders. Now, there's no saying he didn't get the information from that, but it's in the Pinchin Street crime. When I get to that, it's the tracks above the arch. Now, I don't know this, and if somebody lives in London and they look at the tracks, I need to know whether the tracks above where the Pinchin Street line is, and I think it goes to a goods yard, but the tracks change at the points. Now, in the Bruce Partington affair, which is about its Secret Service, the body's placed on the roof of a train, and it leaves that station that's in London, near where these people lived, and I think it's near Whitechapel. And as it leaves the station, the body dropped onto the roof. As the train leaves the station, it gets to the point further away, and the train shakes as it goes over the point. The body falls off, and they find Bruce Partington's body. Oh no, it's Cadogan West. Anyhow, they find his body at the points. Now, if the points were above the Pinchin Street arch, could the body have fell over the parapet and down below the arch? It's just a suggestion because that crime's never been solved, and it's just been recently covered by the BBC. So I think, yeah, unfortunately I haven't seen it, but I'm going to try and see it. So okay, I'm going to leave it there. But thank you for your time, and if anybody wants to make a comment, thank you very much. Bye.